aspects of the class. There's really two functions to the class. One is we're studying the Book of Ruth, but secondly, the rabbi is very interested in building an adult ed program, and so much of the class is going to be an introduction to Torah, introduction to Tanakh, applicable to Ruth, but we want everyone to be on the same grounding. Some people come here with more background, some people come with less background. We want everyone, when we start to open the Book of Ruth, to have a level of comfort. Feel free to raise your hands. You may ask a question and I may not answer it based on time. I may say that's a great question. Take no offense, but you know we've got to move on. I have a source book here. Now the Book of Ruth is only 4 chapters. It's 8 pages in here. And the source book, oh David, you got the email, correct? Did you print it out? You have it on your sheet. Good, I have page numbers, okay. So the source book's like 100 pages. There's introduction, there's the text, which is 8 pages, and there's commentary afterwards, which is for you to take home and study, maybe the big basis of our study. Second, 2 weeks from today, we have this room. So 2 weeks from today, if we feel we did finish, I mean, we will finish reading the Book of Ruth. But if people want more, we can come back in 2 weeks and do more study. If not, that's okay. I'll still have Hebrew class here in 2 weeks. Or maybe what we'll do is we'll come back in 2 weeks and maybe do Ruth for an hour and then Hebrew class for an hour. So that's 2 weeks, June 2nd. I hope people still have their calendars available. Another thing I'm going to call my veteran students know, sometimes we'll be talking about a subject and I'll take a little time out for a little side lesson. You know, I might go a little step, half a step away from the subject matter, but that's okay. I'll quickly get back to our topic of Ruth. Okay. Any questions so far? Last chance for quick questions, because this part, the introduction, I'm just kind of going. I'm like going to be in a zone. I'm going to go in a spiel. It's going to be fast, and but when we get to reading the Book of Ruth, there's going to be definitely more interaction there. We're going to start with the Tanakh. We're going to start with the Hebrew Bible. People may be familiar. The Tanakh is an acronym for the Hebrew Bible, right? Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Now, even if you don't know the words, maybe you do. At Passover Seder, and also at Havdalah on Saturday night, we sing the song. It goes like this: Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the what? Elijah the prophet. Nevi'im, the second part of the 3 parts of the Hebrew Bible, is the prophets. The third part is Ketuvim. If you don't think you know what the word ketuvim means, I bet you do. Because you probably know what a ketubah is. What's a ketubah? A wedding. It's a wedding contract. Now, is this wedding contract in oral form or in written form? It's in written. Okay. Ketuvim means writings. So the Hebrew Bible is divided into 3 parts: the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. The word Torah, by the way, has multiple meanings. Sometimes when you say the Torah, what do you think of when you say, somebody says Torah, the word Torah, the Torah, what does one think of? Instructions. Now that's very good. You're thinking of like the literature, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. What's another meaning of Torah? Instructions. Law. That's an excellent answer. The law is included within it because etymologically the word Torah means law. What's another meaning of the word Torah? Scroll. Like, yeah, the physical scroll, the scroll that's up in the ark that weighs like 30 pounds and you carry it around and don't drop it, don't drop it, don't drop it. Right, same word Torah can mean different things. You know what's funny? Sometimes people will use the word Torah when they're talking about the whole Tanakh. You know, it's like, I'm going to Torah study. Like, I'm going to Torah study. Oh, what are you studying? I'm studying the Book of Samuel. So the Book of Samuel is technically not in the Torah part of Tanakh. You really shouldn't say that you're studying Torah because you're studying a book from this part, and your response to that would be, shut up, you know what I mean. When I say I'm studying Torah, you know it's from this part. This whole literary corpus, the Hebrew Bible, is also called the written Torah, but there's a whole other Torah. There's the written Torah, or written law, and the oral law, the oral Torah, which according to tradition was transmitted orally, traditionally. I make my quotation marks for that. from God to Moses to the elders. And this oral law was eventually written down, starting in the 2nd century of the Common Era. And the first part of the oral law is the Mishnah, around the year 200 in the land of Israel. And then commentary on the Mishnah. There's 2 commentaries on the Mishnah, one from Babylonia and one from the land of Israel. That's called Gemara. And Mishnah and Gemara together is Talmud. So the Talmud and other commentaries called oral Torah, oral law. I'm just kind of defining words, because you may be reading something and the word Torah comes up and can mean like 5 different things. All right, so real quick, this is Mishnah. All right, there, see it, good. And then this is, this is a page of Talmud, right? So Talmud
Is Mishnah part of it?
correct. Mishnah plus Gemara is Talmud. So when you say Talmud, I gotta get a camera. When you say Talmud, you mean Mishnah and the Gemara. You mean the Gemara, the commentary on the Talmud. Okay?
So what are the difference between those 2 books?
This is included in this. The big book is this plus commentary. Okay? Excellent question. Thank you. Some define Torah as any, like modern commentaries would also call it, or medieval commentaries would also call it. This is like a study Bible, a Hebrew study Bible called the Mikra Gedolot. This is the book of Bereshit, book of Genesis. So this is the text, and these are all the commentaries. Right? It's a very Jew way to study. It's the Jewish way to study. You study the text with the commentaries. The commentaries fuse with the text, right? And typically the commentaries are longer than the text. My booklet, my source book I hand out, the text is only 8 pages long, and the book is 100 pages long. That's very, very typical. Amongst the commentaries, very interesting is right here. It's called the Targum, and we're going to talk about that. Targum is an Aramaic translation of the Hebrew Bible, and we're actually going to study a little bit of that. These are commentaries. There's Rashi, who's considered sort of the primary exegete, the primary commentator on the biblical text. Okay, that's it. In addition, there's commentaries called Midrash, which are expansions, rabbinic expansions on the story. Is anybody aware of the story of Abraham smashing the idols? Right? That's not in the Torah. It's not in the written law. It's not in the Torah, written Torah. It's in the oral. It's in the Midrash, in the commentaries. Right? You know the story. Why was Abraham chosen? Well, there's a Midrash. There's a story about it. It doesn't say in the Torah. It doesn't say in the Torah why Abraham was chosen. The Midrash, the rabbis build these stories around it. Abraham was a little boy. His father ran an idol shop. He was an idol maker. He takes a stick and he smashes all the idols and he puts it in the big idol's hand. Father comes home. He says, what the heck happened? He says, that big idol over there, he smashed all the other idols. And father says, you know that big idol can't do that. And young Abram, he hadn't changed his name yet, young Abram says, oh yeah? Then why do you pray to it? All right, so that's a midrash that fills in the blanks sometimes in biblical texts. And we're going to study these rabbinic texts. Okay, now, how many are there? Not 2, not 4, not 6, not 8, not 10, not 12. Guess how many copies of the source book I have? 12. The Xerox machine ran out. Now don't open it yet, because I know you got here. Yes, please. I'll put half of it over here. Now, I'm going to ask, like in the old SATs, where they would say, stop, don't turn the page over, because, you finished the math real early, and you want to, go to the reading comprehension, because you need more help with that. Same thing, the camera's here, same thing, I'm going to ask you open simply page 2. And I guess 2 and 3 are facing each other. So let's go through the book, and I have it also scanned, PDF'd. So I know some people, I already sent it to my cousin David, and I know Pat, and I can, if you have a friend that wants it or something like that. And we're taping this, so that maybe you have a friend who can come June 2nd, wasn't able to be here today. I have the text PDF and the video, which is going to be posted online. So let's go through my source book.
Can we write it?
Yes, they are yours to keep. They are yours to keep. Does everybody have a pen or pencil? I have a couple extra pens and pencils. Raise your hand if you need a pen or pencil. The 2 men. Okay. Someone woman take care of the men, okay? So if we look at the table of contents, you see what I have. I prepared some worksheets. We're going to go through that quick. Then on page 12 to 19 is the text of the Book of Ruth, okay? Then we have commentaries, which we may look at or we may not today. It may be something you study at home. It may be something we study at home and we come back in 2 weeks and study. All right? So that's the source book. So if you look up here, we did class 1 intro. We're going to look at the Tanakh. We started a little bit and the place of Ruth, the Book of Ruth, in the Tanakh. How it fits in thematically, historically. And notice when I say historically, I always put my quote marks up there. Because when the Hebrew Bible, even Hebrew biblical texts that think of themselves or sound historical, when the Hebrew Bible says historical is not like what we would think of today. Then we're going to look real closely in the Book of Ruth. Then we'll read the Book of Ruth. Then we may take a break. This may take us the rest of the first hour of the class. I'm going to go as fast as I can. And then we're going to read the Book of Ruth, some other texts, and then Book 3 is the one we're going to look at in depth. Because, you could start and read like the first 3 verses of Ruth and spend hours on that. So we're going to read through the whole first 4 books. There are only 4 books, the 4 books. But Book 3 is maybe the one we're going to delve into and study more in depth. And again, if we meet next in 2 weeks, that would be the one I'd want you to study up on if possible. Even if you don't study up, we would come back and look at Book 3 more in depth. I do want to talk about an introduction to feminist biblical scholarship because that's part of the shtick. And it's very valuable, and I'm going to talk about that. Exactly what we do here, we'll kind of see how we're going for time. Okay, let's turn to page 3. The books of the Hebrew Bible. Now once again, this red book, is this a Bible? It's not a complete Hebrew Bible. It's the Chumash, right? It has the first 5 books, and it has the Haftarot, which is just selections. So this is a full Bible, right? This is a full Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh. Okay? Let's look at the books of the Hebrew Bible. I actually have them numbered on the left column. If you look at the numbers on the left column, how many books are there in the Hebrew Bible? Nope, in the whole Bible. 24. If you look at, okay, we're only on page 3. Oh, yeah, let's stay on page 3. In the left column, 24 books in the Bible. Now listen up. There's a 1 Samuel and a 2 Samuel. Is that one book or 2? The answer is both. There's different ways of numbering it. In some systems, 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel is one book. In another system, it's called 2 books. So in a traditional, actually, the more Jewish way is where you would call 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel a single book. So the numbers in the left-hand column is a more traditional Jewish numbering, 24 books in the Hebrew Bible. Okay? For example, part of this numbering system, if you see at the end of Nevi'im of the prophets, those 12 prophets, right? Those little prophets, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, right? One book. In the Jewish system, it's called one book. Why was it called one book? Because it used to be written on one scroll. It has to do with the technology of the times. Books weren't always written like this. Books were on scrolls. Okay? On the right side is the numbering system like in Protestant Bibles. All right. Now let's go through these books. Oh, one thing we're not going to look at least to start, in the whole Tanakh and in the Book of Ruth. This is where we're not going to talk about, at least to start. Who wrote it? When did they write it? Why did they write it? And is it true? These are questions that normally when you get a book, these are like the things you want to write. You go to the library, there's a fiction section and a non-fiction section. Who wrote it? When was it? Okay, we're not going to study any of that. We will eventually, but I'm just saying, we're going to look at it, its literature and its place in Jewish history, and we'll come to that soon enough. How do we encounter these books of the Tanakh? How would you know of them? To simplify, 2 ways. One, it's in study, like here, we're studying the Book of Ruth. Or you go to the library and you get out a copy of the Book of Psalms and you study it there. Okay, Lynn, welcome, Lynn. I'm going to ask you, can you sit? Yeah, sit there because you're going to need to share a book. I actually have a truncated version.
We can Dave, we'll share. We'll share and she can.
Okay. All right. Why don't you give that to Linda Kane? Thank you. Okay. How might you know these? How might you know these books about? Well, you can take a class. You can go to Borders Book. Borders is out of business. Don't go to Borders Books. You can go to Barnes. I always get them wrong. You can go to Barnes. You can go to all. You can go to Crown Books. You can go to You can go to Barnes and Noble. That's one's in business. And you can order, the Book of Psalms or something like that. Fine. You can know. You're aware of these books through study. How else might you be aware of these books in whole or in part? Well, upstairs in the synagogue, in services. That's actually divided into two. Because we may encounter these books in the Hebrew Bible in the davening, in the prayer part of the service, that is in our Siddur. In addition, sometimes it's at services upstairs, they'll have some scriptural reading, right? So again, the text can be encountered in both ways. Let's think first in a prayer service. Don't worry, we'll get to Ruth. In a prayer service, where do we encounter, let's say, in the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, is there anything in the prayer service that you say, hey, I know that comes from the Torah, from the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. What do you know of in the prayer service? Raise your hand and identify yourself. That if you know, that comes from the first 5 books of the Bible. Yes?
Marsha Ailman,
Yes.
Shema.
The Shema, right? The Shema comes from, the Shema is, ready, 3 paragraphs long. Shema is not just one line. Most people think of the Shema as, there's that first line, and then there's the V'ahavta, the kids sing that so nicely. Then there's that second paragraph that everybody mumbles and stumbles and doesn't really read. And then you have the 3rd paragraph where you kiss your tzitzit, right? Okay. That's not the way to think of the Shema. In fact, previous students in the past, I've taught classes on the Shema, and maybe I'll teach that again later. The Shema is 3 paragraphs. First paragraph is from the book of Deuteronomy. Second paragraph is from the book of Deuteronomy. The 3rd paragraph is from the book of Numbers. Okay? Does anybody know anywhere else in the prayer service from the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible? What did Israel sing when Israel crossed the Red Sea? The Song of the Sea. The Song of the Sea. Michamocha is included. Aj Asher Moshe. The Song of the Sea. That's from the book of Exodus, and it's in the prayer service every day. Every morning. Now, it may be possible that in our services here, we may skip it. Right? But it's in the traditional prayer services every day. See, I figured... See, if I was going to write a prayer book and my goal was just to make $1 million, you put everything in it. Even if it makes the book more expensive, even if it makes it heavier, because the rabbis will want to buy it, because the rabbis love to say, let's skip to page 48. Yes. So I think that's, I like that as much as anything. So this may be, the Song of the Sea might be something that might be skipped, but it's part of the service. What about Nevi'im? Is there anything from the book of prophets that people know of that's in a daily prayer service? Okay, I'll give you a clue. Ready? Looky here. If I go up on my tippy toes 3 times. Kadosh, 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 that's in the Kedusha, the 3rd blessing, the Amidah. Kadosh, 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 right? So holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. That's from the book of Isaiah. All right, that's book number, I'll find it, book number 10. All right, that's from the prophets. And actually, 2 lines later, when you go, Baruch Kavod Adonai Mim Komo, that's from the prophet Ezekiel. All right? So there's samplings of the prophets in the prayer service. 2 lines later, Yimloch Adonai L'olam Al Had Sil L'Dor V'Dor Hallelujah, that's from the book of Psalms. All right, that's from the Ketuvim. If you look at Psalms, that's book number 14 in the Ketuvim. What else from Ketuvim do we know in our daily prayer service? I'll give you a clue. Kids are adorable doing it. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Ashrei is from the book of Psalms. Okay? Enough said. The Tanakh, the ordering of the books, they're incorporated in the prayer service. Also in the prayer service, there's scriptural readings at set times. Let's start at the top. When is the Torah read scripturally, in the course of a day, in the course of a year in the synagogue? What's that? Right, Shabbat morning is the big one, also Monday morning, Thursday morning. Also Saturday afternoon, Shabbat morning is, and in fact, what is read in the Torah? The whole Torah in the course of a year. The whole Torah, from A to Z, is read in the course of the year on Shabbat morning. Here we do a triennial system where it's kind of broken up into 3 years, but okay. So there's a ritual reading of the Torah. What about the Nevi'im? When is that ritually read? The Haftarah on Saturday morning. The word Torah and the word Haftarah. Now here's the thing I do. Veteran students know this, and newer students may not know this. You're forced to vote. So I'm going to give you a vote. You got to raise your hands one way or the other. You got to vote, and if you're wrong, that's okay. And if you're right, that's okay. But try to have a little fun with it. But you got to vote. All right? Okay. The word Torah and the word Haftarah. Torah, Haftarah. I'm going to say raise your hands if you think they're related, and raise your hands if you think the words are not related. The words Torah and Haftarah. Raise your hands if you think the words are related, Torah and Haftarah. Okay? And you would be wrong. Right, the words Torah and Haftarah are totally unrelated. Torah is with a Tav, Haftarah is with a Tet. Torah means law and instruction, Haftarah means completion. They're totally different words. It's just a coincidence. All right. You had to vote on that. This is when I say you got to vote, you got to vote. It's not like, like water reclamation district where you don't have to vote. You know what I mean? When I say you vote, you got to vote. I lost my train of thought. What did I just say last?
So Torah and Haftarah related.
Oh, right. Okay. So the prophets are read in the Haftarah, not the whole thing. We don't read the entire book of Joshua, entire book of Judges. Selections are done every week, like 54 a week, plus on holidays. Little passages. You know how long the Haftarah takes. It takes 6-8 minutes or something like that. But every week, okay, every book in the Nevi'im is read, except one. I think Zephaniah, poor fella. I think one guy got ripped off, and there's no reading over the course of the year. Okay. So again, we're talking about the Tanakh and how we experience it in the course of the year. What about the Ketuvim? When might they be read, not in a study, but in a ritual fashion in the synagogue? The answer is only in certain holidays and only some of them. There's never a time in the service where the rabbi or anyone will say, okay, we're going to read now from the Book of Psalms. It just doesn't happen. It's included in the prayer book like an ashrei, but it's not like a reading from the Book of Psalms.
Don't you do on a daily basis whatever Psalm?
That's almost like study and preparation, and Psalms are in part of the prayer book. But I'm saying this is a special scriptural public reading. 5 books are read from the Ketuvim, and they're 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. Song of Songs, Ruth, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes, and Esther. They're called the 5 Megillot, right? Megillah. Megillah means scroll, okay? But all 5 of these are Megillot. Megillah Ruth, Megillah Song of Songs, Megillah, okay? Now when we say Megillah, like I'm going to go hear a Megillah reading, or I'm trying to study and learn Megillah, what do we tend to be talking about? We tend to be talking about Esther. Now why, if the word Megillah applies to all 5 of these books of the Hebrew Bible, why when we say Megillah, does almost everybody think of the book of Esther? Because everyone likes to party. That's why. That's the reason. Okay? All these books are read on different holidays. You may want to write this down. Song of Songs is read on Passover. Ruth is read on Shavuot. Lamentations, lament something that's sad that happens on Tisha B'Av, the holiday that commemorates the destruction of the temple. Ecclesiastes is read on Sukkot, and Esther we know is read on Purim. Okay? They're holidays. These holidays are in a funky order. Can anybody deduce why they're in this order?
The calendar.
It's based on the calendar. Now, first of all, when you see a list of holidays, and there's not Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in there, you're a little disoriented. It's like, well, I'm used to calendar. I'm used to seeing Rosh Hashanah, and so there's no Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur on this. So right there, it's a little confusing to people. But in the Hebrew Bible, but what's weird about this, if Rosh Hashanah is, what holiday is right after Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? Is Sukkot. But all of a sudden, that's not at the beginning. Why that is in the Hebrew Bible. Does somebody know? Correct. In the Hebrew Bible, the month of Passover is the first month of the year. If you look in the Hebrew Bible, it says, in the first month of the year, on the 14th night, you have a meal with no bread to celebrate the going out of Egypt. So in the Hebrew calendar, the month of Passover is first. So then these go in order in the calendar. Passover, then Shavuos, Passover in the spring, Shavuos in the summer, Tisha B'Av's in the late summer, Sukkot is in the fall after high holidays, and then Purim is next spring early. Okay? I'm doing good for time, because I did go through this. Now, we're going to go through the books of the Bible again. What happened? So you're going to get the fastest, like, boy, if you slept through Sunday school and you forgot anything, this is like the fastest review of stuff that happened in the Hebrew Bible. Because actually, it's important that you know for future studies. And applicable, it's important to know how Ruth kind of fits into this, how Ruth kind of fits into the history. Welcome, Ralph. Ralph, do you want to stay and study?
Stay.
Okay, fine. This is, now, this is, okay. We could get Brian to get a table, okay?
Come on in.
Come on in, Ralph. Now, Ralph has a very, very special connection to the Book of Ruth, which maybe we will talk about in a little bit. A special connection that Ralph has to the Book of Ruth. Okay? Now we're going to go through the books of the Bible. Oops, here. We're still on page 3. Fast, fast, fast. What happened? What happened?
The world was created.
Okay? Maybe even one of those round tables, Catherine? Might be helpful to them?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's 2 of them. Yeah, no, you know what? Let's. Well, they didn't want to. Okay.
I'll put them in the table.
Ready?
Yes.
Let's start. Genesis. What happens? Creation epics, right? Noah's Ark, Tower of Babel, right? Sodom and Gomorrah. Lots of fun. I told you, the Bible's not a children's book. Bible's not a children's book. I already talked about Noah's. Past that already. Right, the calling of Abram. God notes Sarah. God takes note of Sarah, and Sarah gives birth to a son, Isaac and Rebekah. Rebekah is to Esau, and then the second son comes out holding the heel of his brother, and he's called Jacob because he's holding on to his brother Esau's heel. Then Jacob and his mother Rebekah tricked their father Isaac to get the birthright. Remember, Jacob wrestles with the angel of God, and his name is changed to Israel, which means to wrestle with God, right? I always found that a very theological point, right? If you're here, if you're Jew, your name is Israel. What does it mean? Your name means to wrestle with God, right? This is not like a religion with hard and fast answers. Islam means submission. Israel means to wrestle with God. Okay? Jacob has his wives Leah and Rachel. Jacob has how many? Trick question. How many children? 13. He has 12 sons and a daughter. Right? Go Joseph. You've seen the musical with Donny Osmond, now at the Chicago Theater, closing in 2015 or closing in like 2050. Joseph Technology Road at the Chicago Theater with Donny Osmond. Joseph's thrown in a pit. He goes down to Egypt. Potiphar's wife wants a little hanky-panky. Joseph says no. The brothers come down to Egypt. Why did the brothers come down to Egypt? Famine. All right, then they settle in Egypt, and that's the end of the book of Genesis. Okay? Don't worry, I'm going to speed it up. What happens to the book of Exodus? A new Pharaoh, hundreds of years later. He forgot what a mensch Joseph was, right? He wants to enslave the children of Israel. At first he wants to kill the firstborn sons. They put baby Moses in a basket. Moses grows up. Let my people go. 10 plagues. We saw the movie starring future graduate Charlton Heston. Let my people go. 10 plagues. First Passover. Crossing the Red Sea. At Sinai, the giving of the law at Sinai, which is associated with this upcoming holiday of Shavuot, right? There's Passover, and then there's Shavuot. There's the Exodus from Egypt, and there's the giving of the law, right? It's sort of like the birth of it. It's sort of like a bris. This is like an analogy. like a birth, and the giving law is like a bar bat mitzvah, where you accept the law. Just a little analogy, or maybe it's a metaphor, or maybe it's a symbol. I'm not sure. It's one of those. Okay. And then in Exodus, they build the Mishkan and the Ark, where they put in the Ten Commandments. Right. You also the movie and the Nazis' faces melt at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. You've all seen that. You know what we're talking about. Then we go to the book of Leviticus. Laws on purity, lots of priestly laws, including everyone's favorite laws on prohibited sexual relations. And continuing, Leviticus, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, lots of schlepping in the wilderness for 40 years. At the end of Deuteronomy, Moses dies. He's not allowed to enter the land of Israel. He's on the far side of the Jordan, on the east side of the Jordan, in Moab, which is on the east side of the Jordan River. Okay, so we're done with the Torah. Not bad, huh? You didn't even have to go to Hebrew school. Why'd you go to Hebrew school? There's everything there. Okay, now we're going to talk about the Nevi'im. Fast. Who was Moses' second-hand man? Joshua. Now this, I'm going to time out there. Because our scriptural readings are the first 5 books of Moses, and it starts up again, sadly, unfortunately, John gets a little short shrift. The Nevi'im, and it shouldn't. Is the Torah more sacred than the other parts of the Hebrew Bible? Yes. But it's like, 10, 9, 8 as far as level of sacredness, I would say. It's not like 10, 3, and 1. And sometimes, some people in some communities, there's no study of the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, and it shouldn't be that way. In fact, that's the reason why we have Haftorah. Okay? I should have asked that. Why do they read the Haftorah? Sometimes you hear the false answer, the made-up answer. Says, there was a certain time we were prohibited from reading from the Torah, so we had to read from the Haftorah as a substitute. That ain't it. The rabbi said, the Haftorah is holy also. It's not just the Torah that's sacred, and the Haftorah has to be read also. Okay? So Joshua, second command, right? Who played Joshua in the Ten Commandments? Anybody remember? It's John Derek. Yeah, he's pretty dreamy. Okay. So Joshua, what did Joshua do? Conquest of the land, right?
Yep.
Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down, right? He sends out 2 spies. They stay in a house by Rahab, the prostitute, who has a house on the wall of the city. In the kids' books, they say in Hebrew. Okay? But once again, the Bible is not a children's book. All right, I'll tell you a true story. When I was a boy and I was studying this, I was studying this, and I had a children's book, and it left out the word prostitute for this woman Rahab, who helped Joshua. It just said a woman. And then my father and I, we kind of looked it up in the Bible because there was a little trouble, and it said a prostitute. And I go, Dad, what's a prostitute? He goes, look it up. So I look up prostitutes, and I look it up, and it says harlot. So I look up harlot, and it says prostitute. That's not very helpful. Okay, that's a true story. Okay. So Joshua and the conquest of the land. Then we get to the period of the judges. It's like a tribal confederation. Remember Joseph and his 11 brothers, his 12 brothers, they went down to Egypt, and according to the Torah, they sort of kept their tribal identity when they're in Egypt, and when they're schlepping through the wilderness, and through the conquest, and then now they're given territories according to the name of their great-great-grandfather. So you have the tribal territory of Shimon, and the tribal territory of Naphtali, and the tribal territory of Reuven, and the tribal territory of Judah. Okay? And so the book of Judges is this era of the tribal confederation. I'm going to get back to the book of Judges later. I'm going to go through everyone else. I'm going to go back to the book of Judges, because the book of Ruth is situated chronologically in the book of Judges. So I'm going to talk more. We're going to finish with the Torah, the Tanakh, and then we're going to go back to the book of Ruth. The book of Samuel, the people say, give us a king. So Samuel, who was a big macher, he was a prophet and a priest and a judge. They anoint the first king of Israel. Does anybody know who's the first king of Israel? The first king of Israel, Saul. Didn't work out. We'll just say it didn't work out. Okay? Then they anoint the second. Who was the second king of Israel? David. David was second king of Israel. I don't know, what do we know David from? Well, David as a little boy killed Goliath, all right? And David is from the tribe of Judah, the territory of Judah. The city that David is from, what's the city which David is from? It's Bethlehem. It's very significantly important and also takes on important implications in Christianity. David is from Bethlehem. So David's about the year 1000 BCE. And that's, for me personally, where kind of the fuzziness of what's historical and what's just historical and starts to come into focus.
What BC did you say?
1000. 1000 BCE is approximately King David. He conquers, he makes Jerusalem his capital. Then who's his son? Wise King Solomon builds the temple around the year 960 BCE. After Solomon, this is now we're in the Book of Kings. After Solomon, who takes over? There's a split. There's a split and the split into a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. Why did the northern and southern kingdom split? Taxes. I would say in a word, if you had to put it in one word, it's probably taxes. Because the northerns were like tired of sending all their money to the capital in south of Jerusalem, and it's worth. That's a very interesting thing to study. I think the best parallel in American history is the Whiskey Rebellion.
Yeah.
Where do people wear the whiskey? Well, all right, go home, look it up. We don't have time for that. The kingdom sits in the north and south. The capital of the south is Judah, the territory of Judah, which includes the city of Jerusalem. And the north, the main tribe is Ephraim, named after Joseph's second son. The northern kingdom is destroyed in 722 BCE. The southern kingdom is destroyed in 586 BCE. Exiled to Babylonia. And then, lucky for us, the Babylonians were overthrown by the Persians. King Cyrus of Persia says, all right, you can go back and build a second temple. Building a second temple, that's done we're in book 23, Ezra and Nehemiah, right? Ezra was part of the generation of building of the second temple. That's around year 400, I think, in the 400s of the Common Era. 5th century before the Common Era, 2,500 years ago. Ezra said very draconian measure. He said if you were married to a non-Judahite, a non-Israelite woman, you had to divorce her. It's a very draconian measure in the book of Ezra. Okay? And that's kind of it. The book of Psalms, we know, like traditionally King David wrote the book of Psalms. Traditionally, I put that in air quotes. Modern scholars don't go by that. The book of Proverbs, that's book number 15. These wise sayings attributed to King Solomon. Like the poem Eshet Chayil. Do people remember the poem Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor? That's a poem from the book of Proverbs. Okay? So this is sort of the Tanakh on one foot, real fast. Kind of literary and very skeletal historical. This is what I said. I met with the rabbi. I said, let's take the time to give people the groundings. We're taping this so people can look at it, so that when we study the Book of Ruth, we're in a better position. Now, I'm ahead of schedule. Fantastic. Let's talk about the Book of Judges. Book of Judges was after Joshua, and there's sort of tribal confederation, and these guys were kind of in charge. And they're called judges. Some people translate it as chieftains. I think we're all still on page 3. No need to skip a page. Some people, if you wanted, some people would call them almost warlords, the people that were kind of in charge. And some of these guys were good, and some of these guys were not so good. And some of the times were good, and some of the times were not so good. Now, who are judges with whom you might be familiar? The most famous judges. Deborah is one of the most famous. As a woman, she was like a good guy. She judged under a tamar tree. Whatever tamar is. And who else is a judge? He had a little hanky-panky with a non-Israelite woman. Samson was a judge. Okay? There's going to be a lot of hanky-panky in this class. Don't worry. Hanky-panky is the good hanky-panky is yet to come. The book of Judges is very interesting because it has a particular theological outlook. It goes like this. If you're observant to God and loyal to God, good things are going to happen. If you're not loyal, bad things are going to happen. Okay, this is not a world of how come good things happen to bad people. That's another theological outlook. This world of if you're good, good things happen. If you're bad, bad things happen. This is a tougher question. Where do we see that in our Jewish experience, in our Jewish daily life? It's part of the prayer service. The Shema.
Oh, yeah.
That's in the Shema. Excellent. What is your name again?
Rosette.
Rosette. Excellent, Rosette. In the Shema, it's like if you're good, you're going to get rain. It says that in the Shema. If you read the Shema, next time you read the Shema, read it in English. Don't say, aren't those kids cute up there singing? And don't be fumbling for your seats. I mean, read it in English, the whole thing. I've taught a class on it in my Hebrew class, and it's worth looking at. It has a certain theology, which actually some people have a lot of difficulty with. Because this is not a theology that takes account of how come bad things happen to good people. All right. But we see in the Shema, we really see in the book of Judges. So what happens in the book of Judges? Sometimes the children of Israel are really good and really loyal, and they kick ass in battle, and everybody lives peacefully and it's awesome. Sometimes in the book of Judges, they were disloyal to God, and they got whooped in battle, and it was bad times. So it's like there's good times and bad times. I'm actually going to take a little side lesson about this theology of reward and punishment, and language that's used in the Hebrew Bible about this. And so I'm going to look in the Shema, which is on page, I know you don't have your prayer books here. I'm going to find it on page 155. Here's what it says in that third paragraph of the Shema. It's not in your source book. Look at your tzitzit and remember all the commandments of God. Fulfill the commandments. And don't be seduced by your eyes and heart as they lead you astray. All right? That's a tzitzit, or remember the commandments to be loyal. Now, forget about the choice of the word seduced. I know why they did that. But what they translate here is lead you astray. In the Hebrew, it goes like this. I know this class is in Hebrew. And even if you don't know Hebrew, I'm doing a little words here just for you to appreciate. Don't go after your eyes and your heart. Ashertem zonim achareihem. Because you will zonim achareihem. So the verb there is zonim. They translate it here as lead you astray. The word zona in Hebrew means prostitute. It means a prostitute. It's sort of like in the English language, you can use the word prostitute as a verb in a totally non-sexual context. Oh, this guy's prostituting himself by, making a commercial for Budweiser beer or something like that. Okay? In the Hebrew Bible, not only does they use the word zonem, construction of that word, to describe disloyalty, oftentimes there are literary and thematic parallels, metaphors, where the relationship between God and Israel, Israel is an unfaithful wife, and that or that Israel sleeps with prostitutes, is unfaithful wife or even unfaithful husband. That the whole language of fidelity, sort of the poetic language of fidelity to God, is actually incorporated with the language of marital fidelity. All right, it's an important thing to know. It doesn't explicitly come up in the Book of Ruth. It's a little bit will come up in the Book of Ruth, although not directly. But that's an important enough side lesson for you to know. Part of Hebrew literature and how it words things that doesn't come across in the translation.
Isn't the Song of Songs one that's often...
Now, that's a different phenomenon. Song of Songs is a book of erotic love poetry. And the rabbis were kind of prudish. The rabbi said, oh, well, it's obviously a metaphor between God and Israel. So then it's like a metaphor between a faithful relationship between God and Israel. So that is related. I don't know within the Song of Songs if it talks about unfaithful relationships but you can look it up and get back to us in 2 weeks. Okay. When I don't want people to raise their hands, I do that. Like, oh, that's a very interesting question. All right, and all of a sudden nobody raises their hand. Now we can, real quick, we're done with the, okay. Oh, Book of Judges. We haven't quite finished the Book of Judges and Ruth. Good. So is it a good time or a bad time? In the Book of Ruth, in the period of the Judges, is it a good time or a bad time? I'm going to give you a couple clues. 1, there's no violence. No violence. 2, there's no bad guys. I mean, the worst guy in the Book of Ruth, if he's like the worst guy you encounter in your life, you lead a pretty charmed life. There is a famine, but the famine's over. So, what do you think? Are we saying that the Book of Ruth happens in a good time or a bad time?
Sounds good.
Sounds pretty good. It is true in the context of the Book of Ruth, but I think the opposite, actually. What's that? She does lose her husband, but, you gotta die eventually.
Right.
No, you're right. I'm saying, as a whole, and we're going to look at actually the Book of Ruth from a literary standpoint, I think what the rabbis are saying in the first line of the Book of Ruth is, in the days when the chieftains ruled. And the last line in the Book of Judges is, in those days there was no king in Israel, everyone did as he pleased. What they're saying is that the age of the Judges was, in 2 words, or maybe it's 1 word, or maybe it's hyphenated, it was a hellhole. The environment in which we should consider reading the Book of Ruth is, even though this is a book, and we know there's a lot of kindness and chesed and all those things, is that swirling around them it's a horrible time. It's a terrible time. There was no king. It was chaotic. Okay, occasionally had a good judge for a while, but really that's the environment that we have to be reading, that we consider the Book of Ruth to be in. Okay?
We've been rewatching Kenneth Clark's Civilization at Home on YouTube. And he talks about how in Italy, before Italy was unified in the 1800s, your quality of life totally depended on which duchy you lived in. And you could be the most enlightened, advanced, progressive place to be, or to be horrible, just depending on who your leader was.
Catherine, what's the number 1 rule of David's class? No one is allowed to be show off except David. Okay? So, thank you very much. Now, real quick, only because I made this. So Ruth, it's a hellhole. That's an important way to think of it. We can turn real quick to page 4. This is just a spreadsheet that I made. I ripped it off a website, just looking at the Jewish Bible, the Protestant Bible. Look at the left column is the Hebrew Bible, Tanakh, right? How many books in the Hebrew Bible? Go down to the lower left column. 24 in the lower left, right? Got it? 24. Skip over Orthodox and Catholic, far right column, the Protestant Bible. Identical books, different order, and how do they number it? How many books in the far right column?
39.
All right, 39. I just did this because it's interesting. Real quick, in that same column, the Protestant Bible, where do you find the Book of Ruth? Look up. It's actually book number 8 in the far right column. Ruth is in the historical books, book number 8, after Joshua, before Samuel, right? So, if you ever, are in a hotel and you rip off a Gideon's Bible and you come home and you look at it and you look for the Book of Ruth and you look for it at the end, you're not going to find it because the Book of Ruth is in Christian Bibles before the Book of Samuel. Okay, which makes sense because it says in the book of in the age of the Judges. But in Jewish ritual sense, it's with the five Megillot that we read in the holidays, and so it's in the Chetuvim part. All right. Also, real quick, because I know you're looking at this, you notice in Orthodox and Catholic Bibles, what do you see there in the 20s, 20 and 21? Book of Maccabees, right? Book of Maccabees, which is in Greek, it's not part of the Jewish Bible, not part of the Protestant Bible. The Hanukkah story, it's in the Catholic Bible, the Greek Orthodox Bible, not in the Protestant Bible, not in the Jewish Bible. Okay,
There's some prayers though.
Okay? Now, let's turn to page 5.
Okay, Dan.
Yes?
Which is an Orthodox and Catholic Bible based on larger versions of LXX.
LXX is Septuagint, we're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Let's turn to page 5. Okay, this is the Dramatis Personae Loci, which is Latin, because nobody's allowed to show off except me, of the people in the Book of Ruth. I'm not spoiling it by saying who these people are. I'm doing this so we introduce them, because again, the assumption is you kind of know the story before you read it. Well, you got to learn it kind of the first time. But this way I'm going to go through this, so when we read it, I'm not stopping, I'm going to minimize stopping through. You'll say you kind of know that, right? The assumption is that you kind of know the story already, right? It's like in Greek theater, right? You assume everyone knew it. Nobody showed up and said, oh, Oedipus Rex, I hope it's funny, because I'm ready to laugh. You know, the people knew the story before they went there, okay? So let's look at the names, and the name of the place. These are all the proper nouns in the Book of Ruth, excluding references to God. The next column, 1:1, that's the chapter and verse that first appears, okay? So I'll deal with etymologies later. Bethlehem, it's a city, all right? It's a city, it's the eventual birthplace of David, and obviously very important in Christianity. We can talk about that later. It's very, very interesting. It doesn't appear in the Gospel of Mark. There's no reference to Bethlehem in the Gospel of Mark, which is very interesting for people who study the New Testament. So we can, maybe if we have time, we'll talk about that later at the end of class today or maybe next week. Christianity and can somebody ask them to turn down?
The kids singing upstairs, the sanctuary.
Oh, those are the kids. I thought it was something on the radio. Maybe even closing the doors to the... Okay. Judah. Judah was a name of one of Joseph's brothers. Does anybody know what birth order Judah was?
3.
He was actually the fourth, and he was the most dominant. Judah's the most important son, becomes the most important tribe, even though he's the fourth born son. Why do I bring that up? It's not really related to the Book of Ruth. That phenomenon is very, very common in the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible is a wonderful theme throughout. A consistent theme is the relative unimportance of birth order, which in the ancient world was extraordinarily important. I mean, it's still important in certain aspects of inheritance laws and all that. But how many times is it not the firstborn son that becomes dominant? Jacob becomes, Isaac becomes dominant over Ishmael. Jacob becomes dominant over Esau. It isn't, who's the firstborn son of, who's the oldest of Joseph's brothers? Reuven. Whatever happens to Reuven? I don't know. He doesn't even become a major character, right? Of Joseph's sons, who becomes the dominant? Ephraim, the younger son. It's a constant theme in the Hebrew Bible. It doesn't necessarily play that much in the Book of Ruth, but it's important enough to know that Judah, even though he was the fourth-born son, is the dominant tribe. Bethlehem is in Judah, and eventually in Jerusalem, captured city is in Judah. Moab, well, that's that territory east of the Jordan River. Remember, that's where Moses died. Okay? Elimelech is the man from Bethlehem. Don't worry too much about him. He's going to be dead soon enough. His wife is Naomi, and they have two sons, Machlon and Chilion. Those are both with a ch sounds. Don't worry about those guys too much. They're going to be dead real fast. Ephrat is referred to once or twice. That's like another name for Bethlehem. Okay? The two girls from Moab that marry the two boys are Orpah, don't say Oprah, Orpah and Ruth. Okay? That's all done in the first 4 verses of the book. In the first 4 verses of the entire book, which is 4 chapters long, you get all the characters, basically. Okay? Second chapter, we get Boaz. Boaz is back in Judah. Boaz is a mensch. There's no doubt about it. Boaz will become Ruth's second husband. Then you have this guy called Ploni Almoni, which isn't really a name. That's the word. It says in the text, Ploni Almoni. It means this guy that's no name, Mr. No Name. We're not even giving him a name. It's like a guy, and we're not even giving his name. Okay. Then you have those last 3 boxes: Leah and Rachel, and Perez, Tamar, and Judah, Oved, and Jesse. Those are other Bible characters that are referred to. You get that in biblical text. They refer to it. Not going to get really into that right now. But now I want to talk about the etymology of the names. Question. Are biblical names important? Are the names of Bible characters meaningful or important to their character? What do you think? Well, if you're not sure and you're thinking, well, maybe yes, maybe no, you're right. Because the answer is sometimes yes and sometimes no. I mean, sometimes like a Bible, all the names have etymology, all the names have meanings, and sometimes, oh boy, that's significant. and sometimes it's not really significant at all. What is sometimes significant is when there's a name change. Okay? Who can think of name changes in the Hebrew Bible? Jacob changes name. Okay, that and name changes is important. Who knows another one? Abraham, Avram, and Sarai become Abraham and Sarah. Right? Avram means father or high father. Abraham, the father of multitudes. Jacob, whose name was originally meant just heel, because he was holding on to the heel of his older brother, his name becomes one who struggles with God. Okay? So name changes are important. Names sometimes aren't that important. There's a little bit of a name change in the Book of Ruth. We'll get to that. Now let's look at the etymologies. Bethlehem means, well, you should know, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Beit lechem, house of bread. Okay? It's actually 2 words in the Hebrew Bible. Beit lechem is 2 words in the Hebrew Bible. That's okay. Judah, I'm not going to worry about it because it's not, there is an etymology, but it's not really relevant to this class. Oh, David, are you still with us? David Ulster? Well, he's probably showering. Okay. Okay. As a joke, I was going to say, oh, I never liked David much anyways. Okay. Ivy's holding up a sign saying, I never liked you, by the way. Okay. Moab means from father. Interesting. Now, Naomi means pleasant. Machlon and Chilon means sickly and end or finish. Okay? Ruth means like overflowing with moisture, right? And there's oftentimes a connection. Themes of fertility, personal fertility, and fertility of the land is a commonly connected thematically. Orpah means it might mean clouds, and I read it mean clouds in the sense of, it's like not raining, it's dry. They're clouds meaning it's not fertile. Or perhaps Orpah means back of the neck, as in she turned her back, right? Orpah is the one that turns her back and returns to Moab, doesn't follow Ruth back to Judah. And Boaz, the mensch, means in him is strength. So now let's look at these names. Naomi means pleasant. The 2 guys that get sick and die are called sick 1 and sick 2. The mensch is called strength and is in him. The one daughter-in-law who doesn't go along is referred to as kind of unfertile, turning her back. The other daughter-in-law who comes along and ultimately is fertile, name implies fertility. What do you make of all that?
Deck is stacked.
How so?
Well, because positive is fertile, pleasant. I mean, comes from a good family anyway. The God is my king and Naomi. It's good. Comes from
Yeah, but
But
go ahead.
no, it's all. But it's better to have fertility than not fertility.
Correct.
And if you're going to go join up with someone, why not let it be a strong person as opposed to the sickly guys?
Okay.
It sounds to me like these are almost stock characters in a way, like maybe this story already existed in some form, or the
Interesting.
characters existed in some form.
Okay. Very valid. Correct. But how well? I mean, if you read a story, here, I got to tell you something that happened. So sickly 1 and sickly 2. Guy's named sickly 1, he died. Guy named sickly 2, he died. Oh, the person that has the name fertility, she becomes eventually great-grandmother of King David. The woman that has the name not so fertile, guess what happened? What would you say about that story that a buddy is telling you? Did it happen? Do people understand what I'm getting at? If somebody said, I got a story for you. The sickly guy, his name is sick, ill person. And the other guy, his name was also sick person. They die. And the woman who eventually becomes fertile and gives birth to the eventual king of David, to the eventual king, her name implies fertility. What would you say about that story that a guy told you?
Never name my kids.
What?
Sounds like a fable.
Yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like a fable. It sounds fictitious. that all the characters seem to have names. They were given names that coincide with their ultimate characterization, with their ultimate behavior. If you look at it from a literary standpoint, you say, you throw a test and say, I mean, everybody's got a name that's, everybody's got a name that fits their character, that fits the theme of the story.
Do they know that their names mean this? Because it's I'm going into a
Correct.
thing, if you look at somebody in a certain way, they normally tend to act in that way. This is what we were taught as teachers.
Right.
If you think that child's not going to succeed, they don't succeed. The child you think, at least within your group, they don't succeed.
I understand.
So it was, do these names?
You're looking, there's two ways you can look at it. One, you can say, the story's not a true story, right? And so the characters, it makes sense that this literary story, the characters have these names and so on. Or you can say, well, these characters are true people, they live, and it just so happened that the guy that got sick, his name was that, and it just so happened that this guy was like that. All right, I can't tell you what to believe, but I think you know what I believe by the tone of my voice.
It shows you, it points to the author, because the names are crafted.
It points to the fact that it is authored,
right,
and that it's historical in quotation marks as opposed to what we think of as.
And so it's a fast way of reading character in the names
Correct.
for story.
Yes. Real quick, page 6. I want to talk about translations of the Hebrew Bible because they're important. Ugh. I'm just going to, the main languages which the Hebrew Bible was translated. So you can fill it in. If you have pencil, if not, that's okay. The language, first most important language, well, not most important, but first, historically,
Greek.
Alexander conquered the world, and then now everybody speaks Greek. Greek to me. Language 2, the language that was spoken by the Jewish community in the land of Israel from around 500 before the Common Era to 500 after the Common Era. Not Arabic, but Aramaic. Aramaic, like Kaddish is in Aramaic, right? When you go Yikadam, Yikadas, that's not Hebrew, that's Aramaic. Number 3 is Latin. It's important historically and culturally in the church because it becomes the main translation of the Bible for the church. Number 4 is German, just because it's the main intellectual language of Europe.
Printing press.
And number 5 is English. Okay? Let's talk about, real quick, the translations. The translation of the Greek Bible, now I'm going to start using the board. It's called the Septuagint. 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 Which means 70. And sometimes it's called LXX, which is Latin for 70. There's like 70 translators from Hebrew to Greek. Okay?
Translations?
Isn't there an A in Septuagint?
Translators. Question?
Septuagint, isn't there an A?
Nobody likes a show. Okay. Septuagint. Thank you, Septuagint. All right? That was done by the Jewish community in guess what city? What? What city? I'm sorry, guess?
Bethlehem.
Not in Bethlehem. Where would they translate the Bible into Greek? Where was the Jewish Greek-speaking population?
Oh,
Not Ephesus.
Alexander.
Alexandria, Egypt. Very good. The next translation we're going to look at, the Aramaic, is called the Targum. Targum. That's a translation to Aramaic. Okay? It's also the name of the student newspaper at Rutgers University.
Details.
What they used to do in Torah readings, when the people in Israel, the Jewish population, they didn't know Hebrew. They had a Targum. A man would, they would read from the Torah in Hebrew, and the guy would read it out in Aramaic so everybody understood it. The difference between Hebrew and Aramaic is sort of like, called Spanish and Italian. Like close, not exactly. You get some words, maybe you get it, maybe you don't, Spanish and Italian. Okay? So there used to be a person that they would read from the Torah and the guy would bark it out in Aramaic so everybody understood what it was. Okay? That's about the 1st century of the Common Era. The Latin translation is Jerome's Vulgate. It's the Vulgate by St. Jerome. That was around the year 405.
What was the date for the Greek?
First century, Greek, second century before the Common Era. The German, most famous German, who does most famous German translation? I'd say it's Martin Luther, the most famous German translation. That was 1520 to 1534 for the Old Testament. And I want to talk about what's the most famous English translation of the Bible?
King James.
King James Version. Why is it in King James Version of the Bible?
Probably sponsored it.
He sponsored it. 1611. 1611. The King James Bible is a work of great beauty and scholarship. It is fantastic. The King James Bible, is that modern English?
No.
Absolutely modern English. It's not Beowulf, it's not Chaucer, it's modern English. It's like Shakespeare's technically modern English. Okay? And this is, post-date, this is Shakespeare's right before that, just a generation before. So what happened? So if you're a Jewish person in America and you want an English Bible, well, you got the King James Bible. So basically the Jewish community in America and the English-speaking world says, 1, we want our own country clubs. 2, we want our own Bible translation. So, in 1970, the Jewish Publication Society, it's a printing press, it's a public publication site. In 1917, came out with a JPS Bible, Jewish Publication Society, their Bible translation. 1917. That's the one you may have in your bookshelf that you got for confirmation and you haven't opened since.
Right.
And it says the Holy Scriptures. Yeah, I got one of that. Okay? This one, it's very kind of King Jamesy sounding. Then in the 1960s, it's called Old JPS, and then the new JPS was like 1962 to 69. That's, for example, the translation that's used in this, and the translation that's used in this, the new JPS, 1962 to 1969. It is now, we're going to take now I have a question. I'd set the class to 12, but I tried to leave a little slack there because 12:15 is when the kids get out. So if you really have to leave at 12, you got to really leave at 12, but really at 12:15, we have to leave for the kids. Let's take a 5-minute break. It is now, I have 11:12, we'll start at 11:17, and we're going to just do a little bit, and then we're going to read the Book of Ruth.
David, who's the German translator?
What?
Who's the translator in German?
Well, there's Martin Luther was the most famous one. And then there were Jewish ones. Moses Mendelssohn did one, and Martin Buber and Franz Rosenzweig did one in 1925.
Written in Hebrew.
No, German translations of the Hebrew. Luther and Buber and Rosenzweig. Okay, 5-minute break. I'm going to just keep the video running. So if anybody has questions, please come forward. Catherine, did you find out Toby's? You want to go up and take a look now?
Another interpretation. God influenced the meaning.
Sure, right, same thing, it's the after.
Oh, yeah.
It has something to do, or when she's sitting. Okay, because there is, even if you didn't experience it comes up with meals and driving and stuff, and they want to know when
You mean,
you will be.
did you want to give to a friend or what's?
No, we don't have one for Catherine and I are sharing.
Nancy.
And then because Catherine.
Oh, hold on 1 second. David, do you want me to call you back in 5 minutes? I'll keep it, you know what, I'm going to keep it going because I may forget to call you again, okay? I shall. Yes, I
Just
do.
one for me.
What?
I just need one for me. We are, I think we're going to use that for So, and I will, I probably will come to very much. It's a great idea.
I'll look at my book, whatever it is, I'm a little impressed here, but mine is very
Okay.
raisins and nuts. I'm sure it was but I thought that'd be a nice size.
It's a great idea.
Actually, well,
One more thing, May wants a copy of some minutes, but I know that they're not longer.
campus to ladies.
That's what I said when he said yes.
Okay.
So, we're longer. Gosh knows we have them, you have them.
Yeah, it's in our minutes that we're wandering around over the Russians and the Saudis.
But we have minutes, we're real.
I don't want to be running up, and, you know, you got paper and.
It's so long. Because you came to the wine tasting, and I didn't know you wanted to. Well, it was very cool. Are you coming to the Women's Network Power?
Okay, but at the moment it's right on.
It's the 30th of May. No, graduation day.
Oh, that's right.
It is a giant thing, it's white. I don't know why somebody didn't stop the date then. Right, and two people had graduations that night, and you name it. All right. Get a grip. There's a very well. Yeah. I said, I'm going to use my door. Very cool. We're bringing okay, we're going to start in 1
Okay, we're going to start. We're going to please let's sit down. I want to start in 1 minute. Okay, so you want that perfect. You can record it if possible. Okay. Okay, let's come sit down. There.
I'm putting my notes online and selling them.
This was cool. Oh, yeah. That is cold, if one's uncomfortable.
Okay, let's sit down and begin. You know, I forgot in the story of the names and how the name. I forgot my joke that I was going to tell that would make it all. That would put it all together.
Name.
What was the name of the bad guy in the Austin Powers movies?
Dr. Evil.
Dr. Evil. I mean, well, you know, if a guy's name is Dr. Evil, chances are it's a made-up story, you know, as opposed to that really being his name. Okay? Lynn, can we please sit down? I'm going to start. Start over. Let's turn to page 7. A little bit more of introduction to Ruth, and then we'll read the book. You know how I said, oh, we're doing good for time, I'm ahead of schedule? Yeah, well, now I'm behind time. I'm behind schedule. Okay? I do want to end at about 12:05, though. Because I actually have stuff, I have feedback forms. I have feedback forms for everyone. In page 7, Ruth, key concepts and words. I have key words there, the transliteration, the Hebrew, where it appears, and then 3 different translations. These are key concepts to keep your eyes open for when you actually read the book. Okay? Adonai Okay, instead of putting Adonai in characters, I put him as a concept. That's okay. Translated as the Lord. Shaddai is another name for God. It appears in chapter 1, verse 20, and once later. Okay, how do we know the word Shaddai? It's the shin on the mezuzah. It's like considered an earlier name for God.
Feminine.
Correct. And it's related to breasts. Okay. And God says to Moses, he said, you used to know me as Shaddai, but now you know me as Adonai. Okay? Chesed. It only appears 3 times, but it's almost like a theme of the book. Chesed is typically translated as loving kindness, like in the prayer books. Right? Ki olam chasto, because his chesed is forever. The next word, chen, I mostly translate as grace. Okay? Chesed and chen, we see them a lot. Like in Sim Shalom, you know the prayer? Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. You know, God shows grace and loving kindness. The words are used in the prayer book all the time. Right, on high holidays. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu, right? Be gracious to us. Okay? What's interesting though, now we're going to use, when we do our reading, the far right column, the new JPS translation. What's interesting about the translation of chen, or grace, from the King James Bible to the old JPS and to the new JPS? Right, they changed it to favor. What is in the King James Bible, at least in the first 2 translations? No, in the King James Version, the first 2 versions of chen is translated as
Grace.
grace. What do you notice in the Jewish Bibles?
Kindness.
They don't use that word. Why not?
Oh.
Why do you suppose in these Jewish translations do they not I translate it. I would translate it as that. But why don't they do that?
That sounds Christian.
It sounds Christian. Exactly right. It's a concept. Grace becomes a bigger theological concept in Christianity. So it's a little reactive. You know, saying, oh, we're not going to use that word because people know the word culturally. It's actually very interesting. The word grace in the Hebrew Bible, chen is translated in the Hebrew Bible into kare or charis into Greek. In the Greek translation, chen, grace, in the Greek translation becomes charis, which becomes what word in English?
Charismatic.
Charisma, yeah. Right? So chen, grace, becomes charisma in the New Testament. We think of charisma as what? Guy's got charisma.
Attraction.
He's got some, he's whatever. That dude's got it on. That woman's got it on. What a charismatic character. But really, in New Testament theology, it's like something it's really a God-given situation. It's a very important word in the Gospel of John. It's a very important word in the first chapter of John. It's a very important work in Paul's letters. And so the Jewish translators of the Bible, they'll come up with another word. Okay, so it doesn't come across. Of all we read, it doesn't come across. I always found that kind of difficult in the prayer service, that sometimes, God is my Savior. God is my Savior. We say it all the time. I don't know, Sheena, God save him, But it's like Jewish people, that they just sort of have a little trepidation, even with these translations and these terms. And I'm like, whatever. God is my Savior. That's, the concept of Savior means something very different in a Christian context. Okay. But, we thought of the word first. What can I say? Let's look at the word kanaf. Look how it's translated 2 different ways. Wings, in its first instance, translated wings, and then skirt or robe. We know that this word is in the Hebrew Bible and other places. God led us out of Egypt on eagle's wings, right? It's also in the Shema, that tzitzit are put in the corner of our garment. Same word. Okay? Now why do I bring that up? Again, it's not a Hebrew class, but if all we're looking at is the far right column, all we're looking at is New JPS translation. In one chapter we see the word wings, and in another chapter we see the word robe, and we don't get it. We don't understand how in Hebrew it's a play on words, or in Hebrew there may be a connection there because the same word is used. Okay? So even though the class is in Hebrew, we're not going to be reading in Hebrew. I just want people to be aware of this phenomenon. Goel is an extremely important concept in the book. Goel means redeemer. Now we have it in the liturgy. God is my redeemer. It's in the prayer book. Goel, God is our redeemer. We say it in the prayer book all the time. There's two types of redeemers. One is thinking of God as our redeemer. That's not how it is in the Book of Ruth. In the Book of Ruth, it's one relative to another. It's like bailing out a relative that's in a hard situation, financially or otherwise. And that word redeemer is used in that context in the Book of Ruth. Okay? One last thing is yibum. It's a word that doesn't appear in the Book of Ruth, but it is alluded to. And the best translation is in the lower right-hand corner, Levir, Levir. And you look at Levir, you might say, oh, looks like the word like Leviticus and Levi. That's a coincidence. Levir is Latin for brother. What is it talking about? I'll tell you. Imagine you have a man and a woman. They're married. The guy dies. No heir for his property. The woman wants a child, and they need a child to carry on the father's name and inherit the property. So what happens? The brother-in-law of the deceased is intimate with his sister-in-law. The baby is not the biological father's baby. The baby belongs to the deceased person and carries on the line. It's called a levirate marriage. It's a type of redemption. It's a type of legal proceeding for inheritance laws and such. Okay? Now, before we start the Book of Ruth, again, we're going to read this multiple times. We're going to read it now, and we're going to read it in 2 weeks. I have a question. Without commitment, raise your hand if there's a possibility you can be here in 2 weeks. All right, we'll try. We'll try. We'll at least get it through once. There's certain things that you could think of. You know, the first time we read it is one thing, but, you know, like, oh, what are the themes of the book? You know, as you're reading it, and as we're reading out loud, think about what are the themes of the book, all right? Maybe I want somebody to take notes if possible, or just circle. I want somebody to be on the God squad. Which means whenever God is referred to in the book, either talking or talked about or referred to, either God, Adonai, or Shaddai, Barbara, can you circle it? You're going to be on the God squad. Where anytime God is referred to, just keep note of it and we'll kind of keep track of that, okay? By the way, speaking of God squad, Peggy Lipton died, who was in the Mod squad.
Oh, yeah, right.
Who knew she was Jewish? I didn't. No. That just, and I'm like, should be an expert on this type of stuff. But I didn't know Peggy. Okay. So Barbara's on the God squad. And let's skip to page 12 and start reading. Now, I'm going to start, and then I'm going to pass it off. Ruth chapter 1. In the days when the chieftains ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah, with his wife and 2 sons, went to reside in the country of Moab. We know where that is, in Egypt. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name was Naomi, and his 2 sons were Machlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem in Judah. They came to the country of Moab and remained there. Why was there a famine? Does it say? No, it doesn't say. So Elimelech, soon to be dead white male, Naomi's husband died, I told you, and she was left with 2 sons. They married a Moabite woman, one named Orpah, the other Ruth. They lived about 10 years. Then the 2 of them, Machlon and Chilion, guess what? They also died. So the woman was left without her 2 sons, without her husband. She started out with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab. For in the country of Moab, she had heard that the Lord had taken note of his people and given them food. All right, God squad, there's your first mention. Okay? Now, I'm going to do a little side lesson here, because it's a really, really important word. The Lord had taken note. You see that towards the end of verse 6? So it's in the Hebrew, again, we're not in Hebrew, it's kind of go up 2 lines and on the right. Ki fakad. Ki fakad. Fakad. Here, you know what I'll do? I'm gonna here's taken note is yellow, and then here in red is ki fakad. Okay. What does that word mean? How do we know that word? There's a parsha called Pikudei. How else do we know that word?
Isn't it in Exodus? God takes note or something?
Correct. God takes note of it. Where is it in the liturgy? Correct. In the egalitarian version of the Amidah, we say, "Bless you, Adonai, Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah." God who is the shield of Abraham and fakad. It oftentimes, yeah, but it really it's a different word. It means like to take note of something. It's like accounting. It's almost like military officers checking up his troops. Okay, but the point is, this word is what God does to Sarah when he notices her to be childless. God took note of Sarah, and she gave birth to a child. Now the same word, God took note of his people. It's the same word. It's a literary connection. It's a literary connection.
What is that word?
Pakad, pei kuf daled. It's a Hebrew word.
Meaning?
To take note of. But it's, again, you wouldn't get it in English translation. Okay. Who wants... Now this is very interesting. I have here the Targum in English, and it's in your book on page 22. That was, don't turn it. That was, like in this big book, it's like this column, the Aramaic translation. I'm going to read to you verse 4 and 5 in the Aramaic translation into English. Now you put your back at reading 4 in your text where it says they married Moabite women, and you follow along while I read this in Jewish interpretation. Here it goes. They transgressed the decree of the word of the Lord and took upon themselves foreign wives, the daughters of Moab. The one of one's name's Orpah, the name of the other was Ruth, the daughter of Eglon, king of Moab. And they dwelt there for 10 years. All right, that's an interpretive translation of the text that puts a whole different meaning on it. What's different about it? What?
They did a bad thing.
Right, they married a Moabite thing. They're saying that's bad. And they mention what family the girls are from, which isn't in the Hebrew Bible. Okay? So which is right? So if somebody says, what was Ruth's heritage? Would you say she's from the daughter of Eglon, the king of Moab? Which it says in the Targum? Or would you say it doesn't say?
Well, she's a Moabite, so that's...
But was she the daughter of the king? Okay. Here's a way to look at this question. Here's a way to look at the question. Who wrote Billy Budd?
No.
Really? Who else wrote Billy Budd? Right, it was an opera. Right? Who wrote Billy Budd? It was Benjamin Britten, right?
Okay.
And you're right, and that's the opera. So if you go to the opera, you see Billy Budd. Ben Britten did the music, and Ian Forster did the libretto. So who wrote Billy Budd? Right, in the Jewish tradition, we would say, oh, there's the primary text, and then, the movie version fed. In the Jewish tradition, they're much more equal than you would say, like the original and the remake. The interpretation, this is also holy. This is Torah. It's oral Torah. It's not the written law, but the interpretation, is also holy. Okay? Real quick, verse 5. And because they transgressed the word of the Lord by intermarrying with strange people, their days were cut short. So that gives a reason why the sickly one and sickly two passed away. Right? So this is interesting to read along. When you get home, we're going to read, if we finish, we're going to read Ruth chapter 3, and you read it's called the Targum, it's on page 22, and it's awesome. It's like an additional story. It's not the written law, but it's holy. Okay? Who would like to read starting in verse, where are we, 7 or 8?
7.
Let's just, Vip, go ahead.
Accompanied by her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living, and they set out on the road back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Turn back, each of you, to her mother's house.
That's 1. Sorry, go ahead.
May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that each of you find security in the house of a husband." And she kissed them farewell. They broke into weeping and said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." And Naomi replied, "Turn back, my daughter."
That's 2. This is twice, 2 times that Ruth says, don't follow me back to Judah. Go back. They're widowed. Her daughters-in-law are widows. She said, I'm going to head back to Judah. Go back to Moab. Go back to your home country. Don't follow me back to Judah. That's the second time that Ruth says.
Naomi.
That Naomi says to Orpah and Ruth, don't follow me. That's the second time. And I'm going to give you a clue. The next time, this is like 2A and 2B. But go ahead.
Why should you go with me? Have I any more sons in my body who might be husbands for you?
Okay, stop there. Okay, then go say, turn back my daughters.
Turn back, my daughters, for I am old to be married. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I were married tonight and I also bore sons.
Okay, comma, stop right there. It's the next verse. 2 things here. She says once, go back, and then she says again in verse 11, she says, turn back, my daughters, why should you go with me? Have I more sons in my body who might be husbands to you? Turn back. I'm going to call that 2, because she says it twice, but there was no response between them. So she says once, and then she says twice, 2A, 2B, to her daughters-in-law, turn back, don't come with me. Now, one moment. What does this mean when she says, have I any more sons in my body who might be husbands for you? To what is she referring? The Levirate marriage. She said, oh, if I had another son that would be your brother-in-law, he could father children for you, but I ain't got no more kids. All right, so it's a reference to that Levirate marriage. Yes?
Well, we can't deal with the evolution of real estate in this because you got a line of women can't inherit.
Well, they can. We'll talk. You know what? That's a very valid point. But let's keep hustling. Thank you very much, Rob. Verse 13. Who would like to read? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Your name again?
Martha.
Martha.
Okay. Should you?
Should you wait?
Okay. Should you wait for them to grow up? Should you, on their account, debar yourselves from marriage? Oh no, my daughters, my lot is far more bitter than yours, for the hand of the Lord has struck out against me. They broke into weeping again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law farewell. But Ruth clung to her. So she said, see, your sister-in-law has returned to her people and her gods. Go follow your sister-in-law. But Ruth replied, do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Okay, that's a famous quote, right? In the King James Bible, it says, wherever you go, I will go. In the King James Version translation, does anybody remember how it goes? It says, whither thou goes, I will go. That resonates with a lot of people, the King James Bible. There's one thing I forgot to mention in my skipping.
Turn back.
No, I'm not. I'm just going to read it. It's on page. I'm not going to read it. In Deuteronomy, no Ammonite or Moabite shall be admitted into the congregation of the Lord. None of their descendants, even the 10th generation, shall ever be admitted in the congregation of the Lord, because they didn't meet you with food and water on your journey when you left Egypt, because they hired Balaam, son of Beor, from Pethor Aram Naharaim to curse you. Okay. I forgot to do that as I skipped the page. It says, and there's reasons for it, we can talk about it later, for those who come back next week, we'll look more in depth. According to this, marriage to a Moabite is forbidden. Okay?
But didn't
They did.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay, so how do you reconcile that? I'm going to skip that. This is how the rabbis reconcile it, because they got to come up with a reason. Here's a commentary in the Midrash on why on marrying the Moabite when it's clearly forbidden. I got all these texts where it's forbidden. They married Moabite. The Tanaim taught in the name of Rabbi Meir that it says, well, they did not convert. I'm going to skip that for now. Nor did they immerse themselves in the new halacha. That they did not immerse themselves in the new law and that had not been made, and they were not unpunished. Because the law says Ammonite and not Ammonitess, Moabite and not Moabitess. So what are they saying?
That you
So
can
it
marry.
doesn't apply to the.
It doesn't apply to women, right? Now clearly, when it's said in Deuteronomy, you're not supposed to marry a Moabite, it's clear, one would say clear meaning of the text, that you're not allowed to marry a Moabite man or woman here. I mean, that's almost so understood. But the rabbis are like, we got to kind of kosher up this relationship. We got to kosher up this relationship because King David is going to come through. Oh, in fact, the law says you're not allowed to marry a Moabite man, but marrying a Moabite woman is okay. All right, this is the rabbinic process. It's like they got to smooth things out for King David. Yes, Martha.
But a child is considered Jewish if it's from a Jewish mother.
Okay,
So
those
if-
laws are modern. Those laws are modern. Okay, let's continue. How far did, who was reading, Martha? How far
I
did we
was
get?
reading, made it to number 17, where you died.
Yeah, where you die.
Continue, said Martha, you're reading beautifully. Why don't you
Where you
continue?
die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus and more may the Lord do to me if anything but death parts me from you. When Naomi saw how determined she was to go with her, she ceased to argue with her. And the two went on until they reached Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole city buzzed with excitement over them. The women said, "Can this be Naomi?" "Do not call me Naomi," she replied. "Call me Mara, for Shaddai has made my lot very bitter."
Okay, stop right there. We have two things. One, God Squad.
And she changed.
There's also God Squad in verse 17. Oh, God Squad was all over here. All over here. Barbara's going crazy with the God Squad. And what else does she say? Name, she says, call me Mara. What does Mar mean? Ready? You know this, ready? Maror, bitter herb, same thing. Okay? She says, don't call me sweetness, call me bitter. All right? I don't know if it's officially name change, she's still referred to, but this is like her self-imposed nickname. Okay? Why don't you finish off the book?
I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. How can you call me Naomi when the Lord has dealt harshly with me? When Shaddai has brought misfortune upon me? There's the Lord again. Thus Naomi returned from the country of Moab. She returned with her daughter-in-law Ruth the Moabite. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest.
So now they still call her a Moabite. Like in modern things, like when you convert, it's like, no, once a person converts, so it wasn't quite as official then. You didn't go to the rabbi and you didn't, oh. Let's go to,
What do you mean she converted?
okay, just a second. Verse 15, I forgot to mention. So she said, see, your sister-in-law has returned to her people, right? Verse 15, go follow your sister-in-law. That's number 3, right? Ruth said to her daughters-in-law, once, go back. Twice, go back. Then Orpah does go back. And then Naomi says in verse 15, go follow your sister-in-law. That's the 3rd time she says to Ruth, go back. Ruth replies, don't tell me to leave anymore. Where you go, I will go. And Naomi didn't mention it anymore. Now, what relevance does that have to modern day?
Conversion.
Right, that according to tradition, when you ask to convert, when you go to a rabbi, you're supposed to turn away 3 times. You say, I want to convert to Judaism. The rabbi says, get the hell out of here. Why would you want to do that? And you go 2nd time, says, I want to convert to Judaism. And he says, get the hell out of here. Why would you want to do that? And then you got to go a 3rd time, and then the guy, and he knows that you're sincere. And that's the origin of that. Okay? So, did we finish the chapter? They returned to Bethlehem. What time? Barley harvest. That's springtime, Pesach time. Okay? Yes?
Quick question, is this a self-conversion when she says, your people shall be mine, your God shall be mine?
Again, is it a conversion in a technical sense of the word? I don't know.
But you're saying they still call her a Moabite, even though she isn't, or is, she's relocated.
You got it. What I'm saying is it's not, you're right to keep asking those questions. It wasn't, it isn't the concept that it is today. The concept of almost of a religion didn't exist. It was more of your tribe you know. Yeah.
But she was coming from Judah. I mean, she went to Moab.
Ruth
That's
was originally
Naomi.
born in Moab. Ruth was
Right,
born
right, but where were they living?
In Moab.
In Moab?
For 10 years they were in Moab during the famine, okay? Let's continue book 2. Oh, we better finish. Ivy, you're a fast reader.
Now Naomi had a kinsman on her husband's side, a man of substance of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, I would like to go to the fields and glean among the ears of grain behind someone who may show me kindness.
Okay, really? What does that mean? Harvest time, for charity purposes, you have to do two things. One, leave a corner of your field, and the other, when you're reaping, I don't do flora, I don't do fauna, I don't do weights and measures, but I had to learn this. Reaping is like collecting the crop, but if it falls aside,
Right.
gleaning is picking up that which has fallen. And according to the laws, when you harvest, you can reap it, but if something drops aside, you can't pick it up, and it's supposed to be the poor are allowed to glean, pick up the droppings to have for themselves. So Ruth says, I'm a charity case. I need to go to a field and pick up some dropped crops. That's gleaning. Continue, Ivy?
Yes, daughter, go, she replied, and off she went. She came and gleaned in a field behind the reapers, and as luck would have it, it was the piece of land belonging to Boaz, who was of Elimelech's family.
Right, so Ruth's a distant cousin or something of Ruth and Elimelech, he's related. Continue.
Presently, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem. He greeted the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they responded, the Lord bless you. Boaz said to the servant who was in charge of the reapers, whose girl is that? The servant in charge of the reapers replied, she is a Moabite girl who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, please, let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the reapers. She has been on her feet ever since she came this morning. She has rested but little in the hut. Boaz said to Ruth, listen to me, daughter. Don't go to glean in another field. Don't go elsewhere, but stay here close to my girls. Keep your eyes on the field they are reaping and follow them. I have ordered the men not to molest you.
Now I looked that up, that doesn't refer to like a sexual assault. The word molest can in modern context, you don't know what it means. It's more like workplace harassment. Boaz says, do your charity collecting in my field, hang out with my girls, and I'll tell the boys not to give you a hard time. Okay? And go ahead.
And when you are thirsty, go to the jars and drink some of the water that the men have drawn. She prostrated herself with her face to the ground and said to him, why are you so kind as to single me out when I am a foreigner? Boaz said in reply, I have been told of all that you did for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother in the land of your birth and came to a people you had not known before.
Okay, stop right there. See, this is one thing. It's talking, Ruth's reputation for chesed has come with her. Now, the tough thing is, we look at it now and say, well, what did Ruth do that was so great? It's like if it were a modern movie and they wanted to show Ruth was of great character, what would they do? They'd be walking back and there's a sandstorm and Naomi twists her ankle and so Ruth carries her on her shoulders and walking through the sandstorm and you look close up at the sandstorm hitting her face. Oh, what a heroic woman. That's how the movies would do it today. But they don't do that in biblical text. You kind of have to trust when they refer to her works as chesed, of loving kindness, that it's really something special. And that really she could have gone back to Moab and probably found a husband and led a perfectly good life, but she stuck with her mother-in-law who had nothing, and it's a beautiful story. Okay, Ivy, you're reading well, why don't you continue?
May the Lord reward your deeds. May you have a full recompense from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have sought refuge. She answered, you are most kind, my Lord, to comfort me and to speak gently to your maidservant, though I am not so much as one of your maidservants. At mealtime, Boaz said to her, come over here and partake of the meal and dip your morsel in the vinegar. So she sat down beside the reapers. He handed her roasted grain and she ate her fill and had some left over. When she got up again to glean, Boaz gave orders to his workers. You are not only to let her glean among the sheaves without interference, but you must also pull some stalks out of the heaps and leave them for her to glean and not scold her.
Right, not just the fallen stuff, but like pull stuff out and leave it there artificially stolen. He's giving her, he heard that she's a good person, he's giving her favors, and most people read the text, well, maybe Boaz has already got his eye on Ruth. Okay.
She gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned. It was about an ephah,
Good enough.
of barley, and carried it back with her to the town. When her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and when she also took out and gave her what she had left over after eating her full, Phil, her mother-in-law, asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be he who took such generous notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law whom she had worked with, saying, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he of the Lord, who has not failed in his kindness to the living or to the dead." For Naomi explained to her daughter-in-law, "The man is related to us. He is one of our redeeming kinsmen."
Okay, stop there. So one, there's an aspect of randomness. She went to go glean in the field, and she didn't know that the guy was a relative. All right? So, God Squad, even if it doesn't mention God, that's maybe kind of like a behind-the-scenes type of thing. Almost like we saw in the Book of Esther, where God doesn't appear at all, but all these coincidences happen. Now, how else does she refer to him? What's the very end of verse 20? He is?
Redeeming.
He is one of, and it's the same word, goel, redeemer. That's like a legal term. He's maybe a guy who will step up to the plate for a destitute relative. Okay? Keep going, Ivy, please.
Ruth the Moabite said, "He even told me, 'Stay close by my workers until all my harvest is finished.' And Naomi answered her daughter-in-law Ruth, 'It is best, daughter, that you go out with his girls and not be annoyed in some other field.' So she stayed close to the maidservants of Boaz and gleaned until the barley harvest and the wheat harvest were finished. Then she stayed at home with her mother-in-law."
Okay, now it's going to be at sort of end of the harvest season. Okay, let's go to book 3. This is where it gets a little hot and interesting. Who else would like to read? Your name again?
Nancy.
Nancy, go ahead.
Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "Daughter, I must seek a home for you, where you may be happy. Now there is our kinsman Boaz, whose girls you were close to. He will be winnowing barley on the threshold floor tonight. So bathe, anoint yourself, dress up, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not disclose yourself to the man until he has finished eating and drinking."
Okay, stop right there. A couple things. So now it's like harvest time. Threshing floor, there's some sort of processing at the end of the harvest. This is later in the summer. It's like the pulling is done, and now it's more of the processing. He goes to the threshing floor, okay? Threshing floor in Hebrew is goren, all right? G-O-R-E-N. Now, I know 3 people, well, there's 3 people know, or families, with the name Goren. Who do we know with the name Goren? Just the last name. One, Ralph here. I'm sorry, your name? Okay. So that's, it's a last name. It means threshing floor. This is where all the action happens in book 3, on the threshing floor. Anybody else named Goren that you remember or know? Yeah, there's the bridge, the bridge columnist New York Times was named Goren. What was
Charles Gordon wasn't the Times, but yeah.
Goren on bidding,
Gordon on Bridge.
right? Goren on bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Also, there was just an Israeli general. He was like an army. He was like a rabbi in the army. He was the one who blew the shofar at the Western Wall. All right, it's a last name.
Wasn't his name.
What?
It wasn't his name.
Goren was the name of the.
The rabbi got off the boat and took the name Goren.
Well, like Ben Gurion was his name, right? It was a taken name. It was a taken name.
Cool.
So what does Ruth do? What does her mother tell her? Did mother-in-law tell her to do? Get all dolled up. What does that kind of remind you of? Book of Esther. Okay. Continue on line 4.
When he lies down, note the place where he lies down, and go over and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what you are to do. She replied, "I will do everything you tell me." She went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had instructed her. Boaz ate and drank, and in a cheerful mood went to lie down beside the grain pile. Then she went over stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down.
Okay, real quick. What time of year is this?
This summer.
It's the summer. What's the mood?
Cheerful.
Why is it cheerful?
Harvest,
done.
everything.
Why especially is it cheerful this year?
Because there's a famine.
Because there had been a famine. There had been a famine. Okay. This time is like, it's like Wall Street in mid-January when everyone gets their bonuses. And you go to the bars on Wall Street and everybody's getting wasted because they had a good year. Okay? Also, when the guys are in the bars in Wall Street, occasionally their mind starts to think about a little hanky-panky. Okay, continue.
In the middle of the night, the man gave a start and pulled back. There was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. And she replied, "I am your handmaid Ruth. Spread your robe over your handmaid, for you are a redeeming kinsman." He exclaimed, "Be blessed of the Lord, daughter. Your latest deed of loyalty is greater than the first. in that you have not turned to younger men, whether poor or rich.
Right, first act of chesed, this is her chesed again. Her act of chesed, she stuck with her mother-in-law. And the second one is that she sought out him as a husband. He was old, maybe he was rich, as opposed to a younger man. There's commentaries on that. Okay, let's keep going. Continue, please.
And now, daughter, have no fear. I will do in your behalf whatever you ask, for all the elders of my town know what a fine woman you are.
Stop right there real quick. In the Hebrew, third from last line, she's got the fine woman in Hebrew is Eshet Chayil, right? We know that from the poem in the Book of Proverbs, Eshet Chayil. Okay? Continue.
But while it is true I am a redeeming kinsman, there is another redeemer close.
So there may be a guy who has a higher legal obligation to buy out this woman's property. I mean, Naomi needs her she's destitute. Okay, continue. You're doing wonderfully.
Stay for the night, then in the morning, if he will act as a redeemer, good, let him redeem. But if he does not want to act as a redeemer for you, I will do so myself, as the Lord lives. Lie down in the morning, until morning. So she lay at his feet until dawn. She rose before one person could distinguish another, for he thought, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. And he said, hold out the shawl you are wearing. She held it while he measured out 6 measures of barley, and he put it on her back. When she got back to the town, she came to her mother-in-law, who asked, how is it with you, daughter? She told her all the man had done for her, and she added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying to me, do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. And Naomi said, stay here, daughter, till you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today.
Okay, so they're going to check that other guy that has supposedly a higher legal claim, maybe a closer relative. Okay? Although Boaz is like hoping because I think Boaz has got the sweets for Ruth. Okay? Last chapter, we're going to finish. I've actually, there's a lot of interpretation that we haven't done. I've been pretty quiet the past 2 chapters. And so for those that come back next week, we're going to look at it in depth, especially chapter 3. Who would, Catherine, can you read chapter 4, please, page 18?
2 weeks, correct?
In 2 weeks, thank you.
Okay.
In addition, those people who are not in my regular class, if I don't have your email, I don't have your email, I don't have your email, I probably was somewhere. If I don't have your email, I want you to give me your email so that I have it so we can communicate. And then I'll be just like the JUF. Once you give me your email, you'll never get it. I'll find you on a desert island. Okay, Catherine, go forward.
Okay. Meanwhile, Boaz had gone to the gate and sat down there. And now the Redeemer, whom Boaz had mentioned, passed by.
Oh, what a coincidence! Oh my God, the one guy happens to be the gate is like, that's where the action was. That's where like the legal action was, okay?
He called, come over and sit down here, so-and-so.
Right, so-and-so, in the Hebrew, it's Ploni Almoni. Again, like a blank, it's like a made-up name. It's like Mr. Nobody, okay?
Yes, he came over and sat down. Then Boaz took 10 elders of the town and said, be seated here, and they sat down. He said to the Redeemer, Naomi, now returned from the country of Moab, must sell the piece of land which belongs to our kinsman Elimelech.
So that's technically the redeeming thing has to do with the land. Okay.
I thought I should disclose the matter to you and say, acquire it in the presence of those seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you are willing to redeem it, redeem. But if you will not redeem, tell me that I may know. For there's no one to redeem but you, and I come after you. I am willing to redeem it, he replied.
Oh, so, this other guy is saying, sure, I'll take, I will bail out my relative. I don't want the land to go to somebody outside the tribe or outside the mishpacha, right? So I'll step to the plate, says this guy Ploni Almoni, this other guy. So what does Boaz do? Verse 5.
Boaz continued, when you acquire the property from Naomi and from Ruth, the Moabite, you must also acquire the wife of the deceased, so as to perpetuate the name of the deceased upon his estate.
Right, it's a package deal, right? It's a package deal. If you want the property, you gotta also take the girl, okay?
The Redeemer replied, then I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own estate. You take over my right of redemption, for I am unable to exercise.
Okay, so the other guy says, thanks, no thanks. I don't want to do it, right? It might be consider it's a financial burden to take on a wife. Here's the midrash. Here, the midrash, it says, the Hargo. The Redeemer replied, in that case I cannot redeem it, because I have a wife, I'm not permitted to take another one in addition to her, lest there be a quarrel in my home. That's actually not such a bad explanation.
Yeah.
But really he's probably doing it where he's like, it's like, take the cannoli, leave the gun. It's like, I want to take the property, leave the woman. But Boaz says, sorry, it's a package deal. Okay, continue, Catherine, line 7.
Now this was formerly done in Israel in cases of redemption or exchange. To validate any transaction, one man would take off his sandal and hand it to the other. Such was the practice in Israel.
Now that's actually pretty significant and a legal thing, but also just the wording of it, where it says, now this was formerly done in Israel. It makes it sound like a text that's like a story, kind of background and all that. Okay, continue. So go ahead.
So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, "Acquire it for yourself," he drew off his sandal. And Boaz said to the elders and to the rest of the people, "You are witnesses today that I am acquiring from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon.
Okay, finish it off.
I am also acquiring Ruth the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, as my wife, so as to perpetuate the name of the deceased upon his estate."
Okay, now real quick, the word for, we've had it a couple times, estate, it's right there on page 19, on the 3rd line, al nachalato. Okay? That's estate. Do you know how we might know that word? It's in Friday Night Kiddush. In chaltanu. It's twice in Friday Night Kiddush. Why is the word estate on Friday Night Kiddush?
Because the wine comes from God and God's estate.
That's a good guess, but that's not it. Because Shabbat is our inheritance. That's in the text of Kiddush. Shabbat, it says twice in there, Shabbat's like our inheritance. All right, so the Book of Ruth has got nothing to do with Friday Night Kiddush. I'm just drawing a parallel in the vocabulary. What you do at Friday Night Kiddush is right here. Okay, what verse you on? Are you starting 11 now? Catherine?
I think so. All the people at the gate and the elders answered, "We are. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built up the house of Israel. Prosper in Ephrathah, and perpetuate your name in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, through the offspring which the Lord will give you by this young woman." So Boaz married Ruth. She became his wife, and he cohabited with her. The Lord let her conceive, and she bore a son.
Okay, God Squad. How are you doing, God Squad? What have we noticed so far about God up until now?
It's been a pause.
He gives everything good.
And there's been a pause.
Well, maybe we'll go back, next week maybe we'll go back and look at all the mentions of God, all right? But this is really the first thing God does in the whole book. It says God, if you look at the Hebrew, so in the end of verse 13, it's actually in the line, it says, "Vayitain Adonai la," and God gave to her. The first thing that God does as a character in the book is Ruth's fertility. Is involved with the birth of Ruth's child. All right? This is like the first active thing that God is doing. He's referring to guys. They're saying, "Oh, God bless you." They're saying like 50 times. They say in this book, "God bless you." But really involved in the action, this is it. Where it's a funky thing. Where God, just like God did with Sarah. Sarah was 90 years old. It's the assumption in the Torah that Sarah was postmenopausal.
Yes.
And that the birth was miraculous. Okay? This obviously becomes way bigger in Christianity, but it's important to see this. Okay, verse 14.
And the women said,
Lots of women. This is another. When we study this from a feminist standpoint, there's a lot of, the role of women is very, very big, except for the scene with the 10 men, with the testimony, with the redemption. It's a woman's story, almost exclusively. Continue.
And the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not withheld a redeemer from you today. May his name be perpetuated in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain your old age, for he is born of your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons." Naomi took the child and held it to her bosom. She became its foster mother, and the women neighbors gave him a name, saying, "A son is born to Naomi." They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, father of David. This is the line of Perez. Perez begot Hezron, Hezron begot Ram, Ram begot Aminadab, Aminadab begot Nachshon, Nachshon begot Salmon, Salmon begot Boaz, Boaz begot Obed, Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David.
Right? Finishes with King David. All right? Genealogy is very, 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 very important in all the Hebrew Bible. To this day, in some cultures, you ask people, they know their genealogy way back. They'll know back 10 generations. You ask them how old they are, they don't know. I mean, some genealogy. How many people know the name of all of their great-grandparents? All 8 of their great-grandparents know their first, you know? It's just not part of our culture anymore, Western culture. How many people know the name of their great-great-grandfather? You know your grandfather's name, you know your great-grandfather's name. Great-great-grandfather, most people don't know. It's just a cultural thing. Here's what I want you to, okay, one thing is very important. I hope people can come back next week. There's going to be no homework in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Okay? I want people to turn one last thing about the text. When Naomi went down to the threshing floor, and when Ruth went down to the threshing floor, and Boaz was there, what did she uncover?
His feet.
Maybe.
Oh, okay, ready? Most of the time, when you go to synagogue, people say, get your mind out of the gutter. Don't think about this stuff. What I'm telling you is to start thinking about the hanky-panky. Regel can be euphemism for sexual organs. So, did she uncover his feet? Or did she yank his shorts down? His tiny whities? It reads different. It reads totally differently.
Oh, yeah.
It reads totally differently when you say that she uncovered his private parts. Okay? So, for those that come back, when I said we're going to do book, okay, we got to here a little bit. We're going to look at book 3 in depth, right? If you want to look in the back of the book, there's an article called Sex and the Moabite Girl. There's all the articles about, this is a very, hanky-panky scene that's going on here. Okay? When you read it like this, and when the kids read it, it's almost asexual. It is a very sexual scene. Or it can be. I mean, you can read it different. Different interpreters. Some interpreters say, absolutely, regel is euphemism for the male sexual organ. And other respected scholars say, absolutely not. So that's going to be some of the things that we will discuss in 2 weeks. Now, here's what I want you to do. The very last page of your book, rip it out, 115 and 116.
115, 116.
Rip it out. You don't have to open it, just rip it. There is a survey for adult ed for the synagogue. So I want everyone to fill that out, NOW, please. Okay? This is what are you interested in? Okay, ready? The first thing is up to 5 choices. If you have 5 choices, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of what you're interested in. But if you're only interested in 3 of them, only go 1, 2, and 3. Don't fill out, if you're only interested in 1 of these, only put 1. But rank them. The one I'm most interested down there. Then please fill out the rest. Okay, please take a minute and do this now. Can you fill that out real fast?
I gave my copy away, so if you have extras. Or you can send it to me. I know where to find you.
Who needs an extra copy of the... Oh. No, that's one. Okay, David? David?
Yes.
Okay, we're all done here, okay?
All right.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. And I'm going to turn off the camera. Bye-bye.
You take the next one too.